Thank you everybody for joining. Today we're talking about the new dark web, illicit Telegram channels and their impact on cybersecurity. My name is Eric Clay. I'm the Director of Marketing at Flare. And Matthew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric. Thank you everyone for being here today. I'm Mathieu, I'm CTO and co-founder of Flare. I'm happy to be here with Eric. We will have an informal discussion about that. It's a topic we discuss a lot internally and with Eric, and we hope we will be able to bring new information to you, as well as answering your question as best we can.
Awesome. So Matthew, just to get started, and before we even move on to the first slide, I'd like to take a moment and talk about kind of the dark web. So traditionally what we would define as Tor, things available through the Onion router, and then illicit Telegram channels, and then some specific kind of subtypes of dark web websites. So we have dark web forums, dark web marketplaces, and then obviously we have illicit Telegram channels, and kind of compare and contrast some of the differences. So could you provide just a brief overview of kind of what a dark web market, how we define at least a dark web market versus a dark web forum, and what are kind of the key differences, and where does some of that intersect?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we must define that a lot of the market that are available also happen forums. So they usually come by in a pair. So what we describe as a dark web market is a market, so basically a system that allow you to buy illicit content or like PII information of like stolen credit card methods, fraud method, TTPs, all kind of digital good, or even physical good to some extent. So we can talk about the drug and other things that are still also present on the illicit market. But basically, it's a platform. So a market as we know as like Amazon, eBay, but where basically, I mean, none like the legality of what you can find on those markets is well, it's illegal. Let's put it this way. So I mean, the thing is, we started to define that Tor available on the Tor network, on the dark web, like define the dark web definition. The pure definition is a network that's allowed for the clients and the server to keep the anonymity as well as encrypting the data from end to end. We see more and more of these markets having a path on the clear web. So having like two branch, one accessible to the dark web or Tor or even I2P, and as the same time being accessible from the clear webs. So that's why we started to talk about illicit communities, because our definition of dark web is more like a technical definition of like a network that keep the anonymity of both parties. As what we see more and more is sites that enable cybercrime, fraud, drugs, anything that is prohibited, basically.
Yeah, no, so there's a few interesting points to be made there. And I think one of the things to call out immediately, and we'll move on to the actual slides here in a moment, but I do think this is worth mentioning, is like, first of all, so dark web markets, one of the interesting things I find about them is they're not typically there. You have some specialized dark web markets, like my understanding is Russian market specializes in the sale of infected devices, but a lot of the major markets actually don't really specialize, right? They're kind of like these man in the middle organizations. So you have the marketplace, which deals with the vendors who are selling drugs or guns or cybercrime or TTPs or vulnerability information, kind of a broad spectrum of things. And then you have the buyers. And so the marketplace acts as kind of like this trusted middleman who's making it, doing escrow and trying to make sure that the vendors can sell their goods and get paid for them and that everything works kind of seamlessly. And where Telegram is so different is that you have all of these like thousands of individual channels, many of which it's kind of like direct to consumer, right? You're bypassing the middleman and selling direct, which brings all sorts of problems.
Yeah, historically speaking, we saw more of those fractional, more specialized market, but we see them regrouping or getting back into the major one. So we see a trend of like having a fewer market, but the more importance of the dark web than before, where we have like more specialized market as you described, as well as we see the same thing for forums. So we talk about forums of like usually market have their own forums to enable a discussion related to the market. What we see as well is like all those market having a single channel where they can usually provide some updates on the website, announce announcement, sometimes even like new goods that are on sales so they use as well the Telegram as a feed of information as well as another way of bringing people back to the market. What we see here is, since Telegram, the way it's designed, it's more like channel per interest, so that allow to really kind of a tailored, like depending on the interest of the buyer or the seller, like having a more like tailored approach to send the relevant information and then bring the people back to the market where at the right place. So basically facilitating browsing of like all the available goods in the market through the different Telegram channels.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point you made there, right? Is this isn't a one-to-one. It's not dark web or Telegram or clear web, right? Because there's some marketplaces that are even hosted entirely in the clear web, like Genesis Market. As far as I know, it's there's not a Telegram channel for Genesis Market, but in a lot of cases, what we actually see is there's a dark web market, there's a clear web mirror of that market, and then there's even an illicit Telegram channel where a lot of the people who are operating or working with the market are interacting with the users of the market. So there's not this one-to-one, it's either here or here. It's kind of like this continuum where you have interactions across different ones. And there was actually, I was speaking with one of our researchers earlier, and one of the points he made is, so you had raid forums, which got taken down, it became breach forums. And then breach forums recently, the leader was arrested. And so the number two, so, and the website went down too, is my understanding. And so the number two of breach forums went to Telegram and told everybody, like, don't worry, I'm setting something new up. So it's like this, it's almost like this fail-safe way to communicate with other threat actors and other, buyers and sellers from the marketplaces. It's almost a backup of the dark web.
And yeah, it's basically used to create announcements. And we see a lot of there's a lot of disruption on the dark web market that's right now. We see a lot of denial of service attacks on the different major market, and they use Telegram to publicize like, hey, we moved there, this isn't over, this isn't over. So really see kind of a side channel to send information that is more reliable than traditional forums or discussion services on top.
So I think this is an interesting question too, right? Is like, so why is Telegram? Why not Discord or Slack or any of the other millions of kind of instant messaging applications? What are the advantages that Telegram provides? And I think the first, one of the most interesting to talk about is this concept of greater anonymity. And there's a reason we put anonymity in quotation marks here, right? Do you want to spend a minute, Matthew, talking about like if I am a threat actor and I want to be anonymous, why, what that means, what Telegram versus like traditional like Tor network means? Am I more anonymous on one or the other? And is there a reason I might think I'm more anonymous on one than the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, on the technical aspect, using Telegram is still like a service being hosted by a company that have there's an administrator as opposed to Tor, where like the concept of the network is everyone's kind of a node in the network, and there's no central authority in the Tor network as it was for Telegram. You can argue that for each market that are available in Tor, there's a central authority, there's an administrator. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, like not all the communication of the Tor are accessible to only like one administrator, as is the case on Telegram. So basically for Telegram, there's a main administrator, there's a company behind. So that's the concept of like, yes, there's a willingness to not de-anonymize the user, but it's still like based on the good faith of the Telegram mentality and value of the company. So there's no necessarily technical guarantee that it is, as opposed to like a decentralized network where, yes, you can have like services that are owned by one particular admin, and the information that circulates to that service specifically is visible by that specific admin, but there's no like central point of failure as in Telegram. So, I mean, so far we haven't it's still non-moderated. I think that's the main difference between Discord and Slack is there's no moderation in Telegram, like per se. So as on Discord, like yes, there's still like it's encryption end to end. There's still like it's still similar to Telegram. The main difference with Discord is there's a lot of moderation. So channel that doesn't comply with the term of services will be deactivated pretty quickly, and then basically you start playing the cat and mouse game. And it's not possible for a community to establish on Discord in a permanent matter and being efficient this way, as it is on Telegram.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And so one of the things that strikes me though is from Telegram, there's almost a benefit and a curse, right? So the benefit is it's easy, it's reliable, it's easy to use, it's easy to set up channels. I'm sure dark web marketplaces I haven't set one up myself, but I would suspect that they take a little bit of technical know-how and time to set up. A Telegram channel can be created in 2 minutes. It's very simple and straightforward. But the curse is there is a central authority that theoretically has access to all of these interactions that are occurring on, or at least a great deal of them, especially in public channels, that has access to all of these conversations. And I think there's a third piece here, which is like the interactions seem less permanent. They're scrolling in a channel versus something you post on a dark web forum, which threat actors very well know that companies and governments are collecting this information and using it for prosecutions. Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak on that for a moment, Mathieu?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same feeling that when you have like a text messaging conversation as opposed to an email, it's kind of a feel that an email is more persistent. When you say something on the internet or the forums, you're aware that it will stay in the archive in the internet for a long time. Let's put it this way. As opposed to instant messaging platform, you feel that it's like ephemeral. Like you send a message, people that are in the room at that time saw the message and it's gone, which is not necessarily the case. You have the concept of Telegram. When you join a channel, you'll be able to grasp the historical data there. So
but it feels that way, which is important.
Yes. Yeah, and that's sometimes, and like I don't want to jump too much in speculation, but sometimes I feel that it creates a sentiment of like safety for cybercriminals, so they are more willing to share evidence and provide more details because they think there's a concept of ephemeral information on those channels. So that's why it becomes like a super interesting place to be as a company, as a cybersecurity expert, because there's a lot of valuable information. There's a lot of artifact. The fact that Telegram is like more suited to share image, video, attachment, make it as well super useful for cybercriminal, but also super useful for cyber threat intelligence because there's more and more evidence. The problem is like, how can you process everything, all the attachment, all the files that are relevant or being shared on those channels? So you don't you still have the noise problem where some attachment are useless and some aren't. So it's moving. The traditional monitoring of cyber threat intelligence from chatters and interaction between cybercriminals to evidence-based monitoring.
Yeah, and I think that I think the last piece that's really worth talking about here for a minute is the usability, right? I've been on Tor before. Dark web forums are not the most usable. They're very slow. They take a long time to load. They look like they were mostly designed in the 1990s or early 2000s. While Telegram, you have kind of all of the, I'm going to use positive in quotation marks here, but positive aspects of a social media platform, right? It's easy, it's fast. There's little buttons that activate your dopamine receptors, so it's fun. It feels enjoyable. So it's almost like enjoyable cybercrime.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's easy to get information. You organize the channel by interest, and then when you jump, like you don't have to jump from one site to another and wait for the long page loading from the internet from the 90s that you feel on Tor. Like you get on, like you have your interest, you have the channel, you get information. So that's streamlined to some aspect, or facilitate, unfortunately, facilitate the spread of like illicit information because there's, I think Telegram is a great tool. I think it's a great platform. It had the reason to be. The only concern I have is there's no moderation at all, which make it like, unfortunately, being used for non-legitimate purposes.
So one of the things that the other things that I think is important to talk about, right? We've talked fairly extensively about Telegram being a backup for dark web markets and forums. People can communicate kind of in this like safe channel. And we've talked about vendors selling directly to consumers. I would call it almost like the Trader Joe's model. So instead of having like and you might not be familiar with Trader Joe's, Mathieu, but it's a grocery store, and essentially what they do is they buy the food directly, they package it in their own branding, and then they sell it. So you don't pay the markup to buy from like Tyson's or one of the like kind of middleman companies in there. So it's like you're buying directly from the vendor on Telegram. So on the dark web market, the marketplace is serving as the middleman. With Telegram, you're buying directly from the vendor. So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of this trend of as a service vendors, because one of the things that struck me is when we were looking at malware as a service vendors, for instance, like people selling info stealer malware, right? It tends to almost all be sold on Telegram. Very little malware, at least that I've seen, seems to be sold on like more traditional dark web markets. Can you talk about some of the different kind of as a service offerings, like ransomware as a service, malware as a service, et cetera, and why why Telegram might be the platform of choice to sell those?
It's funny you mentioned that, because yes, what we've seen is like traditional forums being used to advertise Telegram channel to go and buy stuff. So as well, like we started to see like the traditional forum post there by cybercriminals and like malware developer, malware operators say, hey, if you are interested by, like, we have an example of Redline, like go on that channel. This is the official Redline channel. We see it's, I think it's facilitated communication for cyber criminals to kind of have this one-on-one conversation. I think also the fact that Telegram offer a lot of like API and bots functionality, so everything is kind of easily automatable, like it can be automated easily because all of this ecosystem of like bots and API on Telegram. So we see as well this kind of a functionality where it's removed the middleman and enable like the original order to have like efficient way to sell and to manage the community in order to get revenue. So don't necessarily need to pass through it to a middleman, as you were describing in your example. We see a lot of like SaaS services that being sold or being traded on Telegram. The interesting part as well is we've seen more and more of those tools, again, integration with Telegram. So for the Redline stealer, for the backend, like recently, I think it was like in the last 2 or 3 versions, there's actually a tab Telegram where you can set up your channel and it will post automatically the stolen information. So the info stealer will post automatically the victim on a specific Telegram channel with automation in order to resell those information. So we see kind of a Telegram being used in like different way and all the like being more and more core of different components of the platform as a service malware.
So almost using Telegram as like command and control infrastructure, where it's just pulling that data directly back, and then you can just repackage it and give it away or sell it on other Telegram channels.
Yeah.
So that's
the
like multi-use case.
That's the trend we're seeing. It's starting to be kind of the like central platform or core component of those automation and software as a service malware.
So I think there's another interesting point to be made for as a service vendors and then vendors more broadly, right? Is there is a reason that the marketplaces exist on the dark web. There's a downside to at least some threat actors selling, or to both vendors and buyers on Telegram, right? Because if you don't have that escrow service, that trusted middleman, how do you know what how do you know that the stolen goods you purchased are actually going to be delivered? And as a vendor, how do you know that you're going to,
yeah,
get
and
paid?
that's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem we see. We see a lot of like fake Telegram channel being created to impersonate as well the official one. So we see all of like this is becoming a problem as well. The other thing is like Telegram is a generic tool, like it's instance messaging platform. So as opposed to a market, or like you were mentioning, Russian market, where you can go and say, I want to buy a machine for the specific country with those credential on it, and like being like refining your search. Here on Telegram, like you just have like a bunch of like raw stolen machine and you deal with it. So there's no platform on top of it that enables you to curate or to pinpoint what you're looking for as well. So that's kind of the downside. Like there's a lot of attachment. The problem is like there's no system on top of the attachment to filter down. So you need to download everything and do it on your own.
And there's going to be a lot of duplication between those downloads.
Absolutely.
So I think infected devices are really one of the core elements here that kind of that are really interesting to look at, some of the differences between dark web markets. So the main markets for infected devices are, you have Genesis market, which is a clear web market. You have Russian market, which is a dark web market with a clear web clone. And then you have kind of these illicit Telegram channels. And the way that they do pricing, I think, reflects exactly what you're talking about, Matthew. So on Genesis market or Russian market, threat actors can browse through browser fingerprints. So essentially devices that have been infected with InfoStealer malware, the browser has been extracted and all the passwords saved in that browser have been extracted as well. And so you can say, oh, I want to buy a bot that has a Netflix login, an NordVPN login, and some threat actors are even looking specifically for devices that have like corporate access, right? So VPNs, intranets, accounting software, etc. So, on infected device markets, you can browse and you can say, okay, I'm going to buy this one. This one has the 5 logins I'm looking for, and it's $25. But Telegram, they can't quite price that way. So they built a different pricing schema in. So instead, you buy access to a channel where logs are continually posted. And it's interesting. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, it's interesting because like we see more and more the concept of subscription, because basically they will sell the stream of data for a specific amount per month or lifetime, and they will be able to monetize the same machine multiple times. So basically, and like if you have 10 people in the VIP community that receive the logs in advance, they will send 1 log into that community, and basically 10 people are going to receive that logs. As well, after that, you have the VIP, you have the private, which is like after the VIP. So after it went 1 or 2 days the VIP, it will trickle down into the private rooms, and the private rooms, again, like subscription-based, lower price, bigger audience, but it's still like you're reselling again, like the same logs like at 50 times for a lower price in the private. And then at the end, after you send it into the public place where it's available for free, sometimes repackaged with like malware or because basically, to the last point of the slide, like what if we can leverage the information that has been like used a lot of time already, and we can leverage that information to generate more victims. So basically, they will package the logs that have been sold 10 times, 15 times. They will make it available for free, and they will include malware. So and it's not systematic, but we see a lot of malware being kind of a package with those free sample. So basically, the idea is to like if it's free, it's because you're the product. I mean, that's kind of a speak by itself as well, and it's basically kind of a marketing cost, and that's like there's a lot of like parallel that can be made through like traditional SaaS platform, because really they are using like the free sample to generate interest into the community to incitate people to subscribe to the pro, the VIP. So it's kind of a marketing channel, like inbound channel to get some subscriber. The other thing is, by having it on the monthly fee, you don't see the spike of revenue based on the batch and on the number of victims you have. You have a steady stream of revenue for cyber criminals. So instead of like, traditionally speaking, the cyber criminal needs to infect machine, have the project, resell it by the pieces, and then get revenue from the sale of those different logs. Right now, even though the stream of like infection or different campaigns are peaking up and down, you still got the steady stream of revenue.
As we know from running a software business, Matthew, monthly recurring revenue is king.
Unfortunately, yeah, it is, and it is the same for cyber criminal. So I mean, they kind of reuse the same models there, and I mean for the same reason, like cash flow, repeatability is key.
Now the question is, how do you do the valuation on a cybercrime business for MRR? What is the multiple?
I know, I'm not gonna get into that. I have no idea, honestly.
So no, it's interesting though. So just to recapitulate something Matthew said that I think is really important. So you have the threat actor who's distributing stealer malware. Maybe they bought a lifetime license from a malware as a service vendor on a Telegram channel, right? So they bought Redline for $900 and they have a lifetime license. Then the command and control infrastructure is actually set up for them in another Telegram channel. So all they have to do is set up the distribution, whether it's phishing emails, cracked software, etc. And then all of the stolen browser fingerprints with all the passwords and credentials and browser history, etc., it's just flowing into this new Telegram channel that they have set up. And then they can take that information and set up another Telegram channel where they're basically selling access. So they're going to say, okay, well, if you want VIP access, you're the first people to see the logs. That's $130 a month, and you have to pay in Monero, and you can be in this channel, and we'll be a max of 10 people. So you'll be the first person to get access if there's bank accounts for sale, or if there's bank accounts in there, if there's corporate access to like high value targets, etc. and then other threat actors pay them. And then so it's like this kind of, they literally have purchased kind of the backbone of their product, and then they're, the productizing is in the distribution, and then they're just selling access to the channels. But it can take place entirely in Telegram with no dark web forum or marketplace involved.
It depends. It's not, I haven't seen people redline, but I mean, that's a fair assessment to say that it is for other Stealer malware or other malware, or either any malware campaign as well. Yes. And I think that's a good segue to the question we have in the chat of like, what change in innovation you come next from Illicit Telegram channel. And I think that is part of the answer. We see more and more Telegram being the core pieces, and like the central pieces where every like process and workflow are built around Telegram. So traditionally, we've seen Telegram being used like a distribution channel. We see Telegram being used more and more as an ecosystem where you can build the full process, and being a central use of like having the C2 panel on the Telegram bot, and having like distribution managed by Telegram, the infection being managed by Telegram, and the reselling managed as well by Telegram. So I mean, that's a little bit of where I see things going, is more and more development and bot functionality around that key component.
So, there's another one here, right? Is StolenCredentials. And when we say StolenCredentials, I do want to take a moment to differentiate it from infected devices, because I think they can be easily confused. So infected devices are specifically devices that have been infected with stealer malware, and the malware has stolen the browser fingerprint of a single user that includes all of their credentials. So if I've saved passwords to Bank of America, NordVPN, Netflix, et cetera, they're going to get, or corporate resources, whatever, they're going to get access to everything if they're able to do that. And I've saved those passwords in my browser. StolenCredentials, we're really talking about name leaks. So I go sign up for LinkedIn. LinkedIn gets breached. The threat actors get my username and password for LinkedIn, which they can then try to replay against other applications that I may have access to see if that I've reused the same password across multiple platforms. And so I'll tell you, Mathieu, like what kind of my impression is, and I'm curious if you agree or disagree. So we talked a little bit earlier about this. There's almost more reputation required on Telegram channels because they're selling direct, right? There's the buyer is going to be more wary of buying something on an illicit Telegram channel if they don't already know and trust the seller than a dark web market where there's some kind of guarantee with escrow. Mm-hmm. And the way I'm going to relate this back is giving away stolen credentials can be a way for these sellers to build reputation on these marketplaces.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, that's a valid point. That's one valid strategy that you described. The other strategy we see is repackaging and reselling the same content. So basically buying it like on one community and reselling it in your community for cheaper. And basically we see that a lot as well, of like repackaging of information being resold for less at mass as well. So there's two things. So either you try to beat on the prices and like lower the quality, or basically reuse or steal the quality from someone else, or either you're trying to like go more like on the upper market, on the niche, where you establish yourself as like the credible and the true source of information for those type of information. So that is basically what you describe as like being like creating reputational, being recognized, and then building kind of a community and like a smaller community around you that trust you and have this trust relationship. But we see as well the other approach where one can buy from the real source of the information and then repackage it, like scrap it off and then make it available really, really cheaper. One point what we see here as well is when we see a lot of combo lists, like we do see some name breach here and there, but it's as well, it's referral from other it either refer to like breach or historically breach and race forums. We see so usually Telegram is not the first source of those name leaks, but for combo lists we see a little bit of difference there, where we see so basically the value of a combo list is repackage the aggregation of username and password that tends to still to be valid. So basically a little bit more being tested, kind of a little bit more
curated. It's kind of like higher value. It's been curated. It's not just like, oh, here's a bunch of Gmails and passwords. There's a little bit of thought that's gone into it.
And being organized by country, as you can see on the screenshot. So depending on like what is the target for password spraying, are you targeting a Canadian SaaS or US SaaS that tend to have more subscribers that are into the Canadian or US market. So depending if you're targeting as a cyber criminal, a SaaS platform in the MISA or a SaaS platform in the North America, you'll tend to curate your target list based on who could be a clients of this SaaS platform. So organize it by country. The other thing we see are organizing by industry. So if you're targeting like a gaming SaaS platform in the US, you most likely will reuse credential that you've seen into leaks that were associated with gaming site that got breached.
Yeah. It's almost like statistically optimized credential stuffing.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you. And OTP bots. So this is a really, really interesting one, right? Because this is really specifically designed to bypass like two-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication controls. And I've heard from more than one CISO and security lead that I've talked to, oh, we have multi-factor authentication. We're not worried about stolen credentials. So can you talk a little bit about what OTP bots are, why they're important, how they're, so really kind of give the whole view on them.
Yeah, it's a threat we started to see, I'd say around a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we see more and more of like 2FA being deployed at the consumer level. So we've seen 2FA being deployed at a corporate level, but in the last 2 years, we really see a lot of like 2FA authenticator apps, SMS two authentication factor for your bank account, your insurance provider. So basically, your accounting for like your any services that you use, like your PayPal, your Netflix, like everything, they tend to offer you the capacity to have a 2FA. We see those 2FA like 2FA for customer being deployed broadly into the financial sector. I mean, for obvious reason, like there's a direct financial gain there of accessing someone else's account. So in response to that, what we see cybercriminal adapting and say, okay, well, now I have the username and password. I know it's valid for a banking, and I'll give you an example because you'll understand like the concept more better with that example. So let's say, you're a cybercriminal, you have like a valid username password for a victim. Let's say it's for you. So basically I have username, let's say I'm a cybercriminal, I have a bank username password. I go on your bank's page, I log it with your username, they ask me the password, that's fine. And then they bring me to, please enter your two-factor authentication. So basically what the OTP bot will call automatically Eric, will impersonate someone from Eric's bank and say, hi, Eric, this is bank A. I'm calling you because we have some problem, but I think we have some problem with your account. To go further down the conversation, I first need to authenticate you and validate that I'm speaking to the right person. So I'm going to send you an SMS to your phone. Can you give it back? Can you give it back to me so I can validate your identity? So basically, what the bot does, it goes to that scenario, clicks on send an SMS button, send the SMS. Basically, Eric will receive the SMS that is coming from bank A, two-factor authentication, and Eric will say, yes, I received the SMS. The code is 123456. And then basically the cyber criminal will do, thank you very much. I made the validation of the account. Everything is good. It was a false alarms. You don't have to worry. Everything's good with alarms. Get the 2FA that you received by the call. Go on the website and type 123456, which is the valid one-time password, and then get into the bank account. So basically, there is a concept like this component of social engineering. But what we see with Telegram is there's a lot of automation that is being made. So basically, all of those social engineering is being automated through Telegram bots that actually will call a specific number with a specific scenario with the different information, and will provide the text value of like what have been like. It will do as well the voice to text to return you the really token, so you can actually automate the full process of like, unfortunately, password spraying and trying to capture the 2FA for the people that you were able to password spray successfully.
I'll tell you something interesting I came across earlier, Matthew, as I was doing some research on, I was using Flare to search the dark web for mentions of different generative AI companies to see if I could find examples of threat actors using it. And I did find one specific forum post in Russian where somebody was speaking about using one of the more common, one of the common voice synthesis. So you take a minute of somebody's voice and you can get something like roughly approximate. And basically like the idea and what they were doing was using the voice synthesizer to make it seem like somebody, like a human is calling the person from the person's country and asking, asking for the 2FA code. So you're taking it, like right now, what we're showing, it's an automated, it's going to be a robot that's talking to you, right? Like, please provide your passcode. We have an issue with your account. But one of the areas that I think threat actors are going and going fairly rapidly, and I think there's some like initial prototypes of this, but I expect it to become much more commoditized, like what we're seeing right now, is threat actors leveraging all of this new technology that's coming out to design even more personal and more risky attacks that users are less likely to be able to pick up on quickly.
And that's up to as well to like a lot of the innovation we've seen in the large language model, where you can actually generate in conversation and do the text to voice with voice sample that you have in order to like have basically a chatting bot that is efficient and more tailored. So I mean, that's unfortunately things I think we'll start to see more and more. We always see a lot of those discussion about like large language model, which is like commonly known as a ChatGPT. So we see a lot of like interest into leveraging ChatGPT to like personalize and make those calls more credible. As well, if you adds up the voice generation that you can do with sample that have like actual that is credible. I mean, that's a combination that is unfortunately really powerful and will be tough to respond to those type of attacks and so those social engineering attacks. Yeah, sorry, Rick, you wanted to.
I'll tell you, I'm gonna just tell a little slightly off topic funny story about something else I came across while I was doing this research, where somebody had asked ChatGPT to tell them the recipe for like meth or something, and they like wrote out the recipe that ChatGPT had told them. They jailbroke it, so it would actually give them this information. And then the next like forum post on the thread was like, "No, you idiot! If you do this, it's gonna kill you." So it's like, why don't you go read one of the legitimate guides? So it's really funny to watch some of like the interplays with the new technology and how it's working. But I do think, to Matthew's point, like I think the attacks are going to get much more sophisticated very quickly, and I think they're going to be automated. And I think they're going to be commoditized, just like what you're seeing on the Telegram channel here, except probably far more high risk.
And that's the thing. Like we discussed, the example was about the login OTP, but you see the date of birth grabber, the CVV2 for credit card, the PIN grabber, the social insurance number. So I mean, we see a lot of those use cases, unfortunately, where OTP bots are being used and get more and more sophisticated, like into the different scenario and the capacity to incitate or to be credible as a social engineering attempt.
So Matthew, is this the end of the dark web? I think that's the question here. And I will say my answer is evolving over time. And is the dark web going to go away? No. But is Telegram going to become kind of the primary forum for cybercrime activity? I'm less convinced the answer is no than I was even a month or two ago. Being able to combine like the command and control infrastructure for certain variants of malware, being able to sell things in an easy way that at least feels anonymous, even if it's not. The lack of moderation or marketplaces getting shut down, it seems like it very well might become kind of the central hub for cybercrime.
Yeah, I think the core pieces is the fact that it's easier to browse information and to navigate, as opposed to the dark web, where like it's still like the fact that it's not indexed on the dark web make it a little bit more difficult to discover a new community. As in Telegram, there's this capacity already, so it's facilitate the discovery of new sources, the discovery of new community, and it's again, unfortunately for the general population, it enable the cybercriminal to be more efficient to discovering, exchanging, getting connected. Yeah, I think I'll agree with you. What we see is Telegram being a central part of it. I think, and I think the answer is no. I mean, I think dark web will stay there for sure. There's some capacity. We see some community still being created, still being active there, and using Telegram more like an additional path to generate traffic to the different sites. But yeah, I think we need to be aware that there's more and more automation, and like instead of being one dispatcher to different, like Telegram being a dispatcher to different community, it's starting to be more and more the place where it's happening.
Let's see. So I think we have, well, we'll go ahead and take questions now. Oh, we actually, no, we have one more slide on Telegram monitoring best practices. So Matthew, how can companies stay on top of Telegram trends? And I think I'm going to caveat this before you answer by saying like one key thing, which is a lot of companies are working with cybersecurity vendors who are should be at least partially monitoring illicit Telegram. I think it would be a mistake though for especially larger, more mature organizations or organizations in regulated industries like healthcare, finance, software, IT infrastructure, et cetera, to just say, oh, my vendor's taking care of it, right? Because there's so many channels, so many new channels are being set up each day. The chances that a vendor has every single channel that's relevant to your organization is probably fairly low because every vendor is going to have different coverage.
Mm-hmm. I think automation is a key there. You need to have automation. You need to be able to pivot on a different channel. So one way we see Telegram operating different by concept, it's easy to share one content from one channel to another channel. So it creates a lot of links this way. So by looking at the information, this is how you're able to kind of a pivot from different additional channel that you didn't see before. So I think those capacity to be able to at least list or being aware of those, like have this concept of index of rooms that are of interest, where you can actually, after that, if you go automatically or manually validate those rooms and join them. As well, I think the biggest challenge in Telegram is being able to parse the evidence. The text is one thing, but there's a lot of like humble lists, as we discussed, stealer logs, namely evidence by a picture or video. So basically, you need to have a way to process them or actually view them and curate what is relevant from what is not. So you still got the same problems there, which is the noise problem. Like there's a lot of like non-relevant image, video, or text that are being pushed from Telegram. So the volume is still huge, and you still get to that point. And I don't think it's reasonable to do it fully manual. I think you need some kind of automation to automate some of the process and some manual validation that can be built internally. Like it just like as an organization, having this component or having this minimal capacity, even though it's been in-house or through acquisition of a tool, I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I think we will go ahead and take questions now. You're feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. You can use the QR codes. So we do have one question at the moment. Feel free to put more either in the chat or in the Q&A. What would it take to change the current popularity of Telegram, and how likely would that be? So I would say pretty unlikely. So I'll tell you, the only thing I could think of to say would be if it was shut down somehow, which seems unlikely because I believe it's hosted in Dubai. It's not in. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, well, I think you're. What I can say is it's the co-founder of BK that started Telegram. So it's still like it's still Russian owned. So the owner of Telegram are Russian, and I mean there's still. I don't want to get too much into geopolitical here, but I mean there's still some concern around that. That being said, I think what will change I don't think really the nationality of the owner and where the server is host is key there. I think what will change the popularity of Telegram is if they're starting to have some kind of moderation, or at the opposite, they started to have too much unrelevant information. It started to be more and more polluted. So those are kind of the two things we see potentially happening. And I mean, I think it unfortunately is there for good. I don't think we'll see any moderation soon in Telegram. I don't think we'll see any takedown soon. It's still privately owned. It's still one owner that pay for all the fee of Telegram, and like that was part of their mantra when they started Telegram, that they stay free. But at the same time, I don't know how that's viable over time, because there's a lot of information, a lot of costs associated with running Telegrams, and only recently we started to see the concept of like subscription in Telegram, when enable you to have like more functionality out of Telegram. But even that, I think the biggest concern for Telegram is at some point it's not sustainable anymore in terms of financial investment from the owner, and they need to find a way to monetize it. And then I think at that point we'll see kind of a shift from to another platform if that happened. So I mean, that question is how long can that service stay affordable, scalable, and usable by cybercriminals?
Yep. Oh, that absolutely makes sense. So we have another question, which is how much of the suggested minimum monitoring practice is now covered by Flare's platform? And then kind of a ancillary question, which is how many keywords are needed to monitor, like reasonably monitor Telegram for a small business?
I mean, I think I mean, it's similar to the dark web. Like you have main rooms and like main community that are available on Telegram that you need to have a look into. So, I mean, I'd say if you want to build something in-house, I think you can have a good coverage, like maybe 50 to 100, the biggest community of Telegram. With that, I think you'll get, and I mean, in terms of keywords, I think like monitoring I think monitoring your domains or keywords is. I don't think the number of terms you monitor is that of a problem to scale. I think the scaling problem came to the number of rooms you want to monitor and what you want to do with that, and how much you want to keep the image, the artifacts, the evidence, and parse those.
And the amount of noise, right? Because like the more rooms, you're going to get duplications, etc. So if you join 500 rooms, you're going to get some duplicate information, some of the same things being shared. Then you have to spend the manual time reviewing each of those to identify, is it duplicated?
Yeah. In terms of like how much is covered by Flare, we are at the moment it's always evolving numbers and changing. Right now we are closer to 1,500, and we keep continuing to add community, so it will grow. We do have the main one, but then after it's kind of starting from the main one, expanding to more niche community that you necessarily weren't able to find. To the last question, isn't Telegram basically state sponsored? In theory, no. In theory, it's really kind of the BK founders that created Telegram, and the reason he dropped from VK is because it started to be too much associated with the Russian state, and he didn't like that. So I mean, that is saying, unfortunately, if there's no in that situation, there's no evidence, or there's no like hard proof that we can say it's state sponsored, and based on the information or the saying of the owner, it is not. The question is how true it is. That's unfortunately we're still doubtful. But yeah, with the information we have, we still tend to think, and we want to give the reasonable doubt that it is not state sponsored.
Yeah, and then we have one more, which is how much does it take a normal person to scan Telegram daily? And I think, like, I would say this is probably 1 hour or more. I would say it's probably impossible to scan Telegram daily without some sort of automation in place. There's simply too many channels with too much going on, too many things being bought and sold, too many files being provided. Like, I personally don't see, unless there's a channel that's like very niche specific. So like you're a healthcare company and you're concerned with like somebody selling, I don't know, insurance cards in a channel that is very like small and niche, where you could literally have one person sit there and watch it. Like it seems like automation is kind of a must-have in this case, Mathieu.
It is, and as well, it's looking at the chatters and the text is one thing. Parsing the evidence and like processing the different attachment or being shared by cybercriminal, that's another ballpark completely. Like I don't think an hour to process the file. Like we have people that are dedicated to build those automated capacity and to ingest those evidence into the platform. And like I don't think it would be reasonable in 1 hour to do that. Looking at the evidence, looking at the text, I could be convinced with some kind of information, but looking at evidence, I think you need something a little bit more advanced in terms of capacity.
Yeah, Thomas, I would suggest probably as a 25-person company, I'd suggest potentially working with a managed security services provider that could help kind of automate detection for infected devices, leak credentials, et cetera. That would probably be like the most cost-effective way for you to get some coverage without spending 6 hours a day looking at Telegram channels. Be like finding a needle in a haystack without the automation. So thank you everybody today for joining. I will say, if you're interested in enhancing your Telegram coverage, as Mathieu mentioned, Flare monitors over 1,500 illicit Telegram channels. Our platform sets up in 15 minutes. We have unlimited seats. It's easy to use. I need to update the 900 plus. There's also a free trial, so you guys are welcome to try it. We also have the dark web archive going back since 2017. We monitor ransomware file leak sites, and then we also look for instances of clear web exposure along with public GitHub exposure. So really a pretty broad range of coverage. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. We're always happy to talk, and you're always free to message us if you have any questions, concerns, any interesting trends you're seeing, or if you just want to talk about cybersecurity. Mathieu, do you have any last words?
No, I think that's. I'll leave it up to you. I think your last words were really good. But outside of that as well, like we are always available. If you want to discuss on it, I can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can ask me more technical question. We can dig into more specific use case, maybe a little bit more tailored to your day-to-day reality. Yeah,
and Thomas, we're happy to suggest an MSSP if this is something you're concerned with and you're interested in looking. So thank you everybody, and have a wonderful day. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.